The CEO panics without an Arabic translator until the janitor's daughter takes over the meeting and uncovers the millionaire's fiancé's scams. Before we jump in, this story reached people in over 50 countries last week. Let's see how far it goes today. The December wind cut through downtown Chicago like a knife, carrying with it the bitter promise of the worst winter in decades. Marcus Wellington pulled his cashmere coat tighter as he stepped out of his black Mercedes, the warmth of the heated seats already a distant memory. At 52, he had built an empire worth $3 billion. But tonight, all that money couldn't warm the ice that had settled in his chest 3 years ago. "Mr. Wellington, the reservation is confirmed for 7:30, James Fletcher, his assistant, said as he closed the car door behind them. "The board members are already inside." Marcus nodded absently, his steel-grey eyes scanning the sidewalk ahead. The annual Christmas dinner with his investors had become a ritual he dreaded, but business demanded these performances. He was about to respond to James when something made him stop dead in his tracks. Huddled against the brick wall of the alley beside Romano's restaurant, a small figure sat trembling in the bitter cold, a little girl, no more than 7 years old, wearing a threadbare pink jacket that had seen better years. Her dark hair hung in tangles around a face that should have been rosy with childhood health, but instead was pale and gaunt. She clutched a raggedy stuffed rabbit to her chest, and Marcus could see her lips moving silently, as if she were telling the toy a secret. "Sir," James noticed his boss had stopped walking. "Is everything all right?" But Marcus wasn't listening. Something about the child pulled at him with a force he couldn't explain. Maybe it was the way she held her stuffed animal, or the determined set of her small shoulders despite the cold. Whatever it was, his feet were moving toward her before his mind could catch up. "Sweetheart," Marcus said softly, crouching down so he was at eye level with the girl. "What are you doing out here all alone?" The child looked up, and Marcus felt his breath catch. Her eyes were the deepest brown he'd ever seen, filled with an intelligence that seemed far too old for her young face. Those eyes reminded him of someone, though he couldn't quite place who. "I'm waiting," she said simply, her voice barely audible over the wind. "Waiting for what, honey?" "For my mama to come back." The words were spoken with such quiet conviction that Marcus felt his heart squeeze painfully. She said she'd be right back, but that was. The little girl paused, her brow furrowing as she tried to count. That was when the sun was up high. Now it's dark. Marcus glanced at his Rolex. It was nearly 7:15 in the evening. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Lily Thompson." She pulled her stuffed rabbit closer. "This is Mr. Whiskers. He's not scared of the dark, so I'm not scared either." "That's very brave of both of you." Marcus felt something shift inside his chest, a warmth he hadn't experienced in years. "Lily, I don't think your mama is coming back tonight. Do you have somewhere warm to go?" Lily's lower lip trembled slightly, but she lifted her chin with remarkable courage. "Aunt Betty said I could sleep in the alley if I was quiet. She has friends over and they don't like kids." The casual way she said it hit Marcus like a physical blow. This child was living in conditions no human being should endure, let alone a 7-year-old. He thought of his own home, with its 23 rooms and 7 fireplaces, all empty and echoing with memories. "Mr. Wellington," James whispered urgently. "The dinner." Marcus held up a hand without taking his eyes off Lily. "Tell me, Lily, when was the last time you had something to eat?" She considered this seriously. "Yesterday, I think. Aunt Betty made mac and cheese, but it was the kind from the box, and she forgot to add milk, so it was kind of crunchy." That was it. Marcus stood up, his decision made with the swift certainty that had built his business empire. "Lily Thompson." "Odi," he said, extending his hand toward her. "Would you like to have dinner with me and my friends tonight? Real dinner with warm food and hot chocolate?" Lily stared at his outstretched hand as if it might disappear if she looked away. "You really mean it?" "I never say anything I don't mean. But I'm all dirty. And my clothes aren't fancy like yours." Marcus's throat tightened. "You're perfect exactly as you are. What do you say? Will you join us?" For a moment, Lily didn't move. Then, slowly, she reached out and placed her small, cold hand in his large, warm one. The moment their skin touched, Marcus felt something he thought was lost forever, a sense of purpose that had nothing to do with quarterly profits or market shares. "Okay," Lily whispered, "but can Mr. Whiskers come too?" "Mr. Whiskers is absolutely invited." As Marcus led Lily toward the restaurant, James falling into step behind them with obvious bewilderment. The little girl looked up at him with those impossibly deep brown eyes. "Mr. Marcus." "Yes, sweetheart." "Are you an angel?" "Aunt Betty says angels sometimes look like regular people." Marcus stopped walking for a moment, overwhelmed by emotions he thought he'd buried forever. "No, Lily. I'm just a man who needed to meet a very brave little girl tonight." What Marcus couldn't know, as they walked through the golden light spilling from Romano's windows, was that this single act of kindness would unravel secrets buried for years, threaten everything he thought he knew about his past, and ultimately lead to a choice that would define the rest of his life. The maitre d' at Romano's had seen many things in his 30 years of service, but a billionaire CEO walking in with a homeless child was definitely a first. The warm air of Romano's restaurant enveloped them like a velvet blanket as Marcus guided Lily through the mahogany doors. The contrast from the bitter December cold was so stark that Lily gasped, her small body visibly relaxing for the first time since Marcus had found her. "Good evening, Mr. Wellington," the maitre d', Giuseppe Romano, greeted them with practiced elegance before his eyes fell on Lily. Giuseppe's professional composure faltered for just a moment, but years of serving Chicago's elite had taught him to roll with the unexpected. "Your usual table is ready, sir." "Actually, Giuseppe, I'll need a child's menu as well tonight." Marcus's hand rested protectively on Lily's shoulder, "and perhaps a warm cup of hot chocolate to start." "Of course, sir. Right away." As they were led toward the private dining room where Marcus's business dinner was scheduled, Lily's eyes grew wide with wonder. She had never seen anything like Romano's, with its crystal chandeliers casting rainbows across cream-colored walls, adorned with original oil paintings. The thick carpet beneath her worn sneakers felt softer than any bed she'd ever known. "It's like a palace," she whispered to Mr. Whiskers, holding her stuffed rabbit so he could see too. The private dining room fell silent as Marcus entered with Lily. 5 of Chicago's most powerful investors sat around a table set with fine china and sterling silver, their faces displaying varying degrees of shock and confusion. These were men who controlled billions in assets, who could buy and sell companies on a whim, and they were utterly unprepared for this moment. "Gentlemen," Marcus said calmly, pulling out a chair for Lily right beside his own seat at the head of the table. "I'd like you to meet Miss Lily Thompson. She'll be joining us for dinner tonight." Robert Ashford, a stern man in his 60s who controlled half the real estate in downtown Chicago, was the first to find his voice. "Marcus, what exactly is going on here?" "We're having dinner, Robert. Just as planned." Marcus's tone carried that unmistakable edge that had made him one of the youngest billionaires in America. "Lily, these are my business associates. Gentlemen, Lily is my guest, and I expect her to be treated with the same respect you'd show any other dinner companion." Lily climbed onto her chair, which was so large her feet dangled several inches from the floor. She placed Mr. Whiskers carefully on the table beside her plate, arranging his small paws just so. "Hello," she said politely, her voice small but clear. "Thank you for letting me eat with you. I promise I'll use my best manners." The simple grace of her words hit the room like a thunderbolt. These men, accustomed to corporate warfare and ruthless negotiations, found themselves face to face with pure, unguarded innocence. William Chen, Marcus's longtime friend, and the closest thing he had to a confidant, leaned forward slightly. "It's very nice to meet you, Lily. That's a beautiful rabbit you have there." Lily's face lit up with the first genuine smile Marcus had seen from her. "His name is Mr. Whiskers. He's been my best friend for a really long time. My mama gave him to me when I was little, not just little like I am now." The waiter appeared with a steaming cup of hot chocolate topped with whipped cream and a cherry, setting it carefully in front of Lily. Her eyes went wide with disbelief. "Is that really for me?" she asked Marcus, her voice filled with wonder. "All yours, sweetheart." Lily wrapped her small hands around the warm mug and took a tiny, careful sip. The expression of pure bliss that crossed her face was something none of the men at that table would ever forget. It was as if she were tasting happiness itself for the first time. "It's the best thing I ever had in my whole life," she announced solemnly, then took another reverent sip. As the evening progressed, something magical happened in that dining room. The initial shock and discomfort of the businessmen began to melt away, replaced by something none of them had felt in years: genuine human connection. Lily's innocent questions about their work, about her amazement at the multiple courses that kept arriving, and her careful attention to her table manners touched something deep in these hardened corporate warriors. "Mr. William," Lily said during the main course, having carefully cut her chicken into tiny, manageable pieces, "do you have little girls at home?" William's expression softened. "I do, Lily. 2 daughters, but they're grown up now. They're both doctors." "That's really important work," Lily said seriously. "When I grow up, I want to help people too. Maybe I could be a teacher or work at the place where they give food to hungry people." The room fell quiet. Here was a child who had nothing, who had been abandoned and neglected, and her greatest dream was to help others. Marcus watched it all unfold with growing amazement. He had brought Lily here on pure instinct, driven by an inexplicable need to protect her. But as the evening wore on, he realized she was the one changing everyone else. Her presence had transformed a sterile business dinner into something real and meaningful. "Lily," Robert Ashford said quietly, his gruff voice gentler than anyone had ever heard it, "tell me about your family." Lily's small hand found Marcus's larger one under the table. "Well, my mama had to go away for a while, but she's coming back. And I live with Aunt Betty, but she's not really my aunt. She just lets me stay there sometimes." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I don't think she likes me very much." The men exchanged glances over her head, each one thinking the same thing. This child was essentially alone in the world. "But," Lily continued, her voice brightening as she looked up at Marcus, "I think maybe Mr. Marcus might be my guardian angel. Aunt Betty always said that when you really need help, sometimes angels come disguised as regular people." Marcus felt his throat tighten. 3 years ago, he had lost everything that mattered to him. He had convinced himself that he was beyond redemption, that his heart had frozen solid in his chest. But this little girl, with her unwavering faith and boundless capacity for hope, was melting that ice, one smile at a time. As dessert was served, a chocolate mousse that made Lily gasp with delight, Marcus made a decision that would change both their lives forever. But he had no idea that in a few short hours, a phone call would reveal a truth so shocking it would shake the very foundation of everything he thought he knew about his past, and about the little girl who had wandered into his life on the coldest night of the year. The grandfather clock in Romano's lobby chimed 10:30 as the dinner finally wound down. Lily had fallen asleep in her chair, her small head resting against Marcus's arm. Mr. Whiskers clutched protectively in her arms. The sight of the exhausted child touched something primal in every man at that table. "Marcus," William Chen said quietly, so as not to wake Lily, "what's your plan here? You can't just take a child home without proper procedures." Marcus looked down at Lily's peaceful face, noting the dark circles under her eyes and the way she instinctively curled toward him for warmth and protection. "I know exactly what I'm doing, William. For the first time in 3 years, I know exactly what I'm doing." Robert Ashford, who had been unusually quiet since Lily's comment about helping hungry people, cleared his throat. "That Aunt Betty she mentioned, someone needs to check on that situation. A child living in an alley." He trailed off, his own memories of growing up in poverty clearly surfacing. "Already handled," Marcus said, pulling out his phone. "James made some calls during dinner. Betty Morrison isn't Lily's legal guardian. She's just been letting the child stay there sporadically. Lily's mother, Sarah Thompson, has been missing for 6 weeks. The authorities haven't been notified because there's no one to report it. The men sat in stunned silence. They had just spent 3 hours with a child who had been essentially abandoned, and she had shown more grace and gratitude than most adults they knew. Marcus gently scooped Lily into his arms, careful not to wake her. She stirred slightly, murmuring something about chocolate mousse before settling back into sleep. "Gentlemen, we'll continue our discussion about the Morrison project tomorrow. Tonight, I have more important matters to attend to." As Marcus carried Lily toward the exit, James appeared with a concerned expression. "Sir, we have a problem. Mrs. Morrison, Lily's Aunt Betty, she's gone. Neighbors say she packed up and left about an hour ago. Apparently, she owed money to some dangerous people." Marcus felt his jaw clench. "So she just abandoned Lily completely." "It appears so, sir, but there's more." James lowered his voice. "I had our private investigator do a preliminary background check on Sarah Thompson, Lily's mother. Sir, you need to see this." They settled into the back of Marcus's Mercedes, Lily still sleeping peacefully across his lap. James handed him a manila folder with trembling hands. "Sir, Sarah Thompson's maiden name was Sarah Wilson. She worked as a pediatric nurse at Chicago General Hospital until 7 years ago, when she suddenly quit and disappeared." Marcus opened the folder, and his world shifted on its axis. The photograph paperclip to the first page showed a young woman with dark hair and the deepest brown eyes he'd ever seen. Eyes identical to Lily's. But it wasn't just the resemblance that made his breath catch. He knew this woman. "Dear God," Marcus whispered, his hands shaking as he stared at the photo. "Sarah Wilson. I remember her." 8 years ago, Marcus had been in a near-fatal car accident. He'd spent weeks in Chicago General's intensive care unit, drifting in and out of consciousness. During his recovery, there had been a night nurse who had sat with him during his worst moments. When the pain medications weren't enough and the nightmares from the accident consumed him, Sarah Wilson had been more than a nurse. She had been his lifeline. Her gentle voice had talked him through panic attacks. Her steady presence had kept him grounded when he thought he was losing his mind. They had talked for hours during those long nights when sleep wouldn't come. And then, when he was well enough to leave the hospital, he had tried to find her to thank her properly. But she had quit just days before his discharge, leaving no forwarding address. "James," Marcus said, his voice barely controlled, "what else does the report say?" "Drill. Sarah Thompson gave birth to a daughter 8 years ago. The father is listed as unknown on the birth certificate." Marcus did the math quickly. Lily was 7 years old. Sarah had quit her job 7 years ago. The timing was... "Sir, there's more." I took the liberty of having the investigator dig deeper into Miss Thompson's disappearance. It wasn't random. 3 men were seen forcing her into a car 6 weeks ago. Street cameras caught part of the license plate, but the investigation stalled because no one reported her missing. Lily stirred in Marcus's arms, her small hand reaching up to touch his face. "Mr. Marcus," she whispered sleepily, "are we going home?" Home. The word hit him like a physical blow. When was the last time his house had felt like a home? When was the last time anyone had waited for him there? "Yes, sweetheart, we're going home." But even as he said the words, Marcus's mind was racing. The brown eyes, the timing, Sarah's sudden disappearance from the hospital right after Lily's birth. It couldn't be a coincidence, could it? "James, I need you to contact Dr. Harrison at Chicago General immediately. I don't care what time it is. I need to know everything about Sarah Wilson's employment there 8 years ago. Sir, it's nearly 11 o'clock. Now, James." As they pulled into the circular drive of Marcus's Lakeshore Drive mansion, Lily woke fully and pressed her face to the window. "Is this really where you live?" she asked in wonder. "It is, and tonight it's where you live too." But as Marcus carried Lily up the steps to his front door, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was about to uncover a truth that would change everything. The little girl in his arms might be more than just a homeless child he'd rescued from the cold. She might be the daughter he never knew he had. The thought should have terrified him. Instead, for the first time in 3 years, Marcus Wellington felt something he'd thought was lost forever: hope. As they stepped into the warmth of his home, neither of them could have imagined that in just 12 hours, a DNA test would confirm Marcus's growing suspicions, and a desperate phone call would reveal that Lily's mother was still alive and in terrible danger. The clock on the mantelpiece chimed 11 times as Marcus carried his possible daughter toward a future neither of them could have imagined that morning. The Wellington mansion stood like a beacon against the December darkness, its windows glowing warmly as Marcus carried Lily through the grand foyer. She had awakened fully during the car ride, and now her eyes were wide with wonder as she took in the soaring ceiling, the marble staircase that curved like something from a fairy tale, and the chandelier that cast tiny rainbows across the walls. "Mr. Marcus," she whispered, her voice echoing slightly in the vast space. "Do you live here all by yourself?" The innocent question hit harder than any board meeting confrontation ever had. "Yes, sweetheart, just me. But it's so big. Don't you get lonely?" Marcus paused on the first step of the staircase. "Out of the mouths of babes. Sometimes I do." Maria Santos, Marcus's housekeeper for the past 15 years, appeared at the top of the stairs. At 62, Maria had seen Marcus through his rise to power, his marriage, his devastating loss 3 years ago, and his subsequent retreat into isolation. But she had never seen him carry a child into their home. "Mr. Wellington," she said softly in her gentle Mexican accent, "I prepared the blue guest room as you requested." "Thank you, Maria. This is Lily. She'll be staying with us." Maria's experienced eyes took in everything: the child's worn clothes, her thin frame, the way she clung to both Marcus and her stuffed rabbit, and most importantly, the way Marcus held her with a tenderness Maria hadn't seen from him in years. "Welcome, Misha," Maria said warmly, extending her hand to Lily. "I'm Maria, and I help take care of this big house." Lily looked up at Marcus for permission before taking Maria's hand. "Thank you for letting me stay. I'll try to be very good and not make any messes." "No, oh, sweet child," Maria murmured, her heart breaking at the formal politeness of a 7-year-old who had clearly learned to make herself invisible to avoid trouble. The blue guest room had been transformed in the hour since Marcus's phone call. Maria had somehow found soft pink pajamas in Lily's size, had filled the room with extra pillows and blankets, and had even managed to locate a collection of children's books from somewhere in the mansion's many rooms. "This is all for me?" Lily asked, setting Mr. Whiskers carefully on the massive 4-poster bed. "All yours," Marcus confirmed, sitting on the edge of the bed beside her. "Lily, I want you to know something important. You're safe here. You don't have to worry about being good enough or quiet enough or small enough. You can just be yourself." Lily looked at him with those impossibly deep brown eyes, Sarah's eyes. But what if myself is too much trouble? The question revealed more about her young life than 1,000 caseworker reports could have. Marcus felt something fierce and protective surge through him, an emotion so powerful it took his breath away. "You could never be too much trouble, sweetheart. Never." As Maria helped Lily into her new pajamas and brushed out her tangled hair, Marcus stepped into the hallway to make phone calls that couldn't wait until morning. His first call was to Dr. Patricia Harrison at Chicago General Hospital. "Marcus, do you realize what time it is?" Dr. Harrison's voice was groggy but alert. "Patricia, I need you to pull Sarah Wilson's employment records from 8 years ago. She was a pediatric nurse in the ICU. Sarah Wilson." There was a pause as Dr. Harrison's medical mind shifted into gear. "My God, Marcus, you're talking about the Sarah Wilson who disappeared, the one who used to work nights in the ICU where you were a patient. You remember her?" "Of course I remember her. She was one of our best nurses. But more than that, Marcus, she was the one who sat with you during those terrible nights when you couldn't sleep. She talked you through the worst of your recovery." Marcus closed his eyes, memories flooding back. Sarah's gentle voice reading to him when the pain was too much to bear. her steady presence during panic attacks that left him gasping and terrified, the way she had somehow known exactly what to say to bring him back from the edge. "Patricia, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Is there any chance? Could Sarah have been pregnant when she left?" And the silence on the other end of the line stretched so long that Marcus thought the call had dropped. "Patricia, Marcus, she came to see me just before she quit. She was scared, confused. She said she had made a mistake but couldn't tell me what it was. And yes, now that you mention it, she did seem different, emotional in a way that wasn't like her." Marcus felt his world shift again. "I need you to do something for me. I need a discrete DNA test, and I need the results by tomorrow afternoon." "Marcus, what aren't you telling me?" "I found her daughter tonight, a 7-year-old girl named Lily, living in an alley because her mother disappeared 6 weeks ago." Another long silence. "Bring her in tomorrow morning. I'll handle it personally." Marcus's second call was to his security chief, David Mitchell. "David, I need round-the-clock protection on my home, starting immediately, and I need you to expand the search for Sarah Thompson. She didn't leave voluntarily. She was taken." "Understood, sir. How much should I tell the men about the situation?" "Everything. This isn't just about business anymore." When Marcus returned to Lily's room, he found her sitting up in the enormous bed, looking tiny against the mountain of pillows. She had changed into the pink pajamas, and with her hair brushed and her face clean, the resemblance to Sarah was even more striking. "Mr. Marcus," she said softly, "can I ask you something?" "Anything, sweetheart. Do you think my mama is okay? Sometimes I have bad dreams that she's scared and needs help." Marcus sat on the edge of the bed and took her small hand in his. "I think your mama loves you very much, and I think she would do anything to get back to you, and I want you to know that I'm going to do everything in my power to find her." "Promise?" "I promise." As Lily settled down to sleep, clutching Mr. Whiskers close, she looked up at Marcus with complete trust. "I'm glad I met you tonight. I think maybe you needed a friend as much as I did." Marcus felt tears prick his eyes. "I think you're absolutely right." He was about to turn off the light when Lily spoke again, her voice already thick with sleep. "Mr. Marcus, when I was really little, my mama used to tell me stories about my daddy. She said he was brave and kind, and that he would love me very much if he could find me. Do you think he's still looking for me?" Marcus's breath caught in his throat. "I think any father would be lucky to have a daughter like you, Lily. Sweet dreams." As he closed the door softly behind him, Marcus realized that tomorrow's DNA test might just confirm what his heart already knew, and if it did, he would move heaven and earth to find Sarah and bring their family together. But first, he had to prepare for the possibility that he was about to become a father to a 7-year-old girl who had already stolen his heart completely. To 5, Marcus barely slept that night. He spent hours in his study, staring at Sarah's photograph and trying to piece together memories from 8 years ago. Every detail seemed crucial now. Every conversation, every moment of connection, every reason she might have had for disappearing so completely. At 6 in the morning, he found himself standing outside Lily's door, listening to her peaceful breathing. He had checked on her 3 times during the night, unable to shake the protective instinct that had taken hold of him so completely. The sound of small feet padding down the hallway made him turn. Lily emerged from her room, still in her pink pajamas, clutching Mr. Whiskers and looking slightly lost in the vastness of the mansion. "Good morning, sweetheart," Marcus said softly. "How did you sleep?" "Really good," Lily said, then paused. "Mr. Marcus, is it okay if I ask where the bathroom is? I didn't want to open any wrong doors." The careful politeness of her request broke his heart all over again. "Of course. Come on, I'll show you." As they walked down the hallway, Lily looked up at the family portraits lining the walls. Marcus had avoided this hallway for 3 years, but seeing it through Lily's eyes made him notice things he'd forgotten. "Who are all these people?" she asked, stopping in front of a large portrait of a young couple with a small boy. "That's my family from a long time ago," Marcus said, his voice carefully controlled. "My parents and me when I was about your age." Where are they now? They died when I was grown up, but I still miss them sometimes. Lily nodded solemnly. I miss my mama too, but I pretend she's watching me from wherever she is, so I don't feel so alone. Marcus felt his throat tighten. That's a very smart way to think about it. They continued past more portraits until they reached one that made Marcus stop abruptly. It was a family photo taken just 4 years ago. Marcus, with his wife Elizabeth, and their 3-year-old son David. They looked impossibly happy, completely unaware that within a year, a drunk driver would take both Elizabeth and David away forever. They look really happy, Lily said quietly, studying the photo. Is that your family too? Marcus struggled to find his voice. Yes, that was my family. What happened to them? The simple, direct question deserved an honest answer. They went to heaven 3 years ago. There was an accident. Lily reached up and took his hand, her small fingers warm and comforting. I'm sorry they had to go away, but I bet they're proud of you for taking care of me. The innocent wisdom of her words hit him like a physical blow. Here was a child who had every reason to be bitter and angry at the world, and instead she was comforting him. Downstairs, Maria was already preparing breakfast, and the smell of fresh coffee and pancakes filled the kitchen. When she saw Lily, her face lit up with genuine warmth. Buenos dias, mija. Are you hungry? Lily's eyes widened as she took in the spread Maria had prepared. Fluffy pancakes, fresh fruit, orange juice, and scrambled eggs. Is this all for breakfast? All for you, little one. You need to eat and grow strong. Murray, as Lily ate with the careful appreciation of someone who had never taken food for granted, Marcus's phone rang. James Fletcher's name appeared on the screen. Sir, I have updates on both situations, James said without preamble. The investigator found security footage from the night Sarah Thompson was taken. 3 men in a black SUV, but the license plate traces back to a shell company. We're digging deeper. And? There's more, sir. I spoke with neighbors in Sarah's building. She had been receiving threatening phone calls for weeks before she disappeared. Something about money owed by someone named Tommy Morrison. Marcus felt ice form in his veins. Morrison? As in Betty Morrison, Lily's fake aunt? It appears so, sir. Tommy Morrison was Betty's boyfriend. He borrowed money from some very dangerous people and disappeared. They thought Sarah might know where he was or where the money was hidden. Marcus watched Lily carefully cutting her pancakes into perfect squares, humming softly to herself, completely unaware that her mother might have been taken because of someone else's mistakes. Keep digging, James, and double the security detail. If these people are still looking for Tommy Morrison, they might come looking for Lily. After breakfast, Marcus explained to Lily that they needed to visit the hospital for a quick checkup. She accepted this with the same quiet compliance she showed toward everything, and an hour later they were sitting in Dr. Harrison's office. Lily, I'm going to take a tiny bit of your blood just to make sure you're healthy, Dr. Harrison explained gently. It won't hurt much. And then Mr. Marcus is going to take you somewhere fun while we wait for the results. Will it help find my mama? Lily asked, rolling up her sleeve. Marcus and Dr. Harrison exchanged glances. It might help us understand some important things, Marcus said carefully. The blood draw was quick, and Lily was brave throughout, only wincing slightly when the needle went in. Dr. Harrison promised to call with results by late afternoon. Where would you like to go while we wait? Marcus asked as they left the hospital. Lily thought seriously about this. Could we go to the library? I love books, but I haven't been able to read any new ones in a really long time. And the simplicity of her request touched him deeply. Here was a child who could have asked for toys or games or any number of expensive things, and she wanted books. The Chicago Public Library was nearly empty on a Thursday morning, and Lily's reaction to the children's section was pure magic. She ran her fingers along the spines of books with reverence, her eyes shining with possibilities. I can really pick any ones I want, she asked. As many as you can carry. For the next 2 hours, Marcus watched Lily lose herself in story after story. She read to him about brave princesses and talking animals, her voice growing more confident with each page. When she wasn't reading, she was carefully selecting books to take home, considering each choice with the gravity of someone making life-altering decisions. It was during this peaceful interlude that Marcus's phone rang with the call that would change everything. "Marcus, Doctor." Harrison's voice was tight with emotion. "The results are in. You need to sit down. Just tell me, Patricia. She's your daughter, Marcus. Lily is definitely your biological daughter." Marcus felt the world shift around him as he watched Lily sitting cross-legged on the library carpet, completely absorbed in a book about a little girl finding her way home. His daughter, the child he never knew existed, was his own flesh and blood. "There's more," Dr. Harrison continued. "I ran the blood work for other reasons too. Marcus, this child has been malnourished for months. Her vitamin levels are dangerously low, and there are signs of chronic stress that no 7-year-old should have. She's been through hell, and somehow she's still the sweetest child I've ever met." Marcus watched Lily turn a page, her small face serious with concentration, and felt something fundamental shift in his chest. This wasn't just about rescuing a homeless child anymore. This was about protecting his daughter, finding her mother, and somehow building the family he'd thought was lost forever. "Daddy!" Lily called out suddenly, and Marcus's heart stopped. But then he realized she was reading from her book, practicing the word as she sounded out the story. Soon, he thought, looking at the child who had unknowingly called him by the title he'd thought he'd never hear again. Very soon, that word would be meant for him. But first, he had to find Sarah and bring her home safely. His daughter deserved to have her mother back, and Marcus was going to move heaven and earth to make that happen. The drive home from the library was quiet, with Lily contentedly flipping through her stack of chosen books in the back seat. Marcus gripped the steering wheel tighter than necessary, his mind reeling from Dr. Harrison's confirmation. His daughter. 7 years of her life had passed without him knowing she existed. 7 years of her struggling, while he had been building an empire that suddenly felt meaningless. "Mr. Marcus?" Lily's voice broke through his thoughts. "Are you sad about something?" Marcus glanced at her in the rearview mirror. Even at 7 years old, she was incredibly perceptive. "I'm not sad, sweetheart. I'm just thinking about some very important things. Sometimes when I think too hard, my head hurts. Mama used to say that feelings are too big for thinking, and sometimes you just have to let them be big." The wisdom in her words hit him like a physical blow. Sarah had taught her that. Sarah, who was somewhere out there, possibly hurt, definitely scared, not knowing that their daughter was safe. Back at the mansion, Marcus found James waiting in his study with a thick folder and a grim expression. "Sir, we have a breakthrough, but it's not good news." Lily had settled in the living room with Maria, who was teaching her to braid friendship bracelets. The domestic scene was so normal, so right, that Marcus had to force himself to focus on James's words. "Tommy Morrison is dead," James said bluntly. "Found in the Chicago River 3 weeks ago. The men who took Sarah don't know that yet." Marcus felt his blood run cold, which means they're still holding her, waiting for information she doesn't have about money that no longer exists. "Where is she, James?" "We tracked the shell company to a warehouse district on the south side. David Mitchell's team is already conducting surveillance. But, sir, these aren't amateur thugs. Victor Kozlov's organization doesn't leave loose ends." Marcus had heard of Kozlov, a man who controlled much of Chicago's underground lending operations with an iron fist and no conscience. The fact that Sarah had become entangled in his web through no fault of her own made Marcus's protective instincts surge with dangerous intensity. "I want a rescue plan in place by tonight, sir. With respect, this requires law enforcement. We can't just... We can and we will." Marcus's voice carried the steel that had built his empire. "That's my daughter in there, James, and her mother. I don't care what it costs or what it takes." James paused mid-sentence, staring at his boss. "Your daughter, sir. The DNA results came back. Lily is mine." For a moment, James was speechless. Then his expression shifted to something Marcus had rarely seen from his efficient assistant: pure emotion. "My God, sir, she's been alone all this time and you never knew. Which is why we're going to fix this tonight." A burst of laughter from the living room drew both men's attention. Through the doorway, they could see Lily showing Maria her finished friendship bracelet, a simple thing made of pink and blue threads that she had woven with intense concentration. "Mr. Marcus," Lily called out when she spotted him, "look what I made! Maria taught me how, and she said I could make one for my mama when she comes home." Marcus walked over and knelt beside her chair. The bracelet was slightly uneven, the work of 7-year-old fingers, but it was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. "It's perfect, sweetheart. Do you really think so? I want it to be special for her. I want to give her something nice when I see her again." Looking into her trusting brown eyes, Marcus made a decision that went against every careful instinct he'd developed over the years. This child deserved to know the truth, or at least part of it. "Lily, I need to tell you something very important. Can you sit with me for a minute?" She nodded solemnly, clutching her bracelet. "You know how you've been staying with me and how I've been taking care of you?" "Yes, you're the nicest person I ever met." Marcus felt his throat tighten. "Well, it turns out there's a very special reason why we found each other. Lily, I'm your daddy." For a long moment, Lily stared at him without speaking. Her small face went through a series of expressions: confusion, hope, disbelief, and finally a joy so pure it took Marcus's breath away. "You're my daddy? My real daddy?" "Yes, sweetheart, I'm your real daddy." Lily launched herself into his arms with such force that he nearly toppled backward. She buried her face in his neck, and he could feel her tiny body shaking. "I knew it," she whispered fiercely. "I knew you felt like family. That's why I wasn't scared with you." Marcus held her tightly, this miracle child he'd found and lost and found again. "I'm never going to let anything happen to you, Lily. Never. And we're going to find Mama and bring her home. We're going to find Mama and bring her home," he promised. As evening fell, Marcus tucked Lily into her bed, reading her 3 stories before she finally drifted off to sleep. She had insisted on keeping the friendship bracelet on her nightstand where she could see it, ready for the moment her mother returned. Downstairs, Marcus's security team was finalizing plans for an operation that would either reunite his family or destroy them all. The warehouse where Sarah was being held was heavily guarded, and Kozlov's men were known for their brutality. But as Marcus looked at the photo James had taken of Lily sleeping peacefully, her small hand still holding Mr. Whiskers, he knew he would face any danger to bring her mother home. What he didn't know was that at that very moment Sarah Thompson was staring out a grimy warehouse window at the Chicago skyline, wondering if her daughter was still alive, and praying to a God she wasn't sure was listening that somehow, somewhere, Lily was safe. The rescue would happen tomorrow. One way or another, this family would be whole again. The next morning came too early for Marcus, who had spent most of the night strategizing with his security team. David Mitchell spread blueprints across the dining room table while Lily ate her breakfast, blissfully unaware that her father was planning what could be the most dangerous operation of his life. "The warehouse has 4 entry points," David explained, his finger tracing the building's perimeter. "But Kozlov's men patrol in shifts. We have a 30-minute window during the guard change at 3 p.m. Marcus studied the satellite photos James had obtained. The building looked fortress-like, surrounded by chain-link fencing and security cameras. Somewhere inside, Sarah was waiting for rescue. "Daddy?" Lily's voice made him look up. Even after 12 hours, hearing that word from her lips sent warmth through his chest. "Are you going somewhere today?" Marcus knelt beside her chair, choosing his words carefully. "I have some very important business to take care of. Maria will stay with you, and there are some nice security guards who will make sure you're safe." "Is it about Mama?" The perceptiveness of children never ceased to amaze him. "Yes, sweetheart. It's about Mama." Lily reached into her pocket and pulled out the friendship bracelet she'd made. "Will you give this to her, so she knows I'm okay?" And that I love her? Marcus took the small woven bracelet, feeling its weight like a sacred trust. I promise I'll give it to her personally. And tell her that you're my daddy now. And that we're going to be a real family. I'll tell her everything. At 2:30 that afternoon, Marcus sat in the back of an armored SUV 3 blocks from the warehouse, wearing tactical gear that felt foreign despite his military training from decades ago. His team of 12 men was positioned around the building, waiting for his signal. "Sir," David's voice crackled through his earpiece, "thermal imaging shows 5 heat signatures in the main building. One appears to be restrained in the northeast corner." Sarah. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. After 8 years, he was about to see the woman who had saved his life and given him the greatest gift he'd ever received. "Remember," he told his team, "we go in quiet, we extract the target, and we leave no trace. These men have no idea who they're dealing with." The guard change happened exactly as predicted. Marcus and 4 men slipped through a side entrance, while the rest of his team created diversions around the perimeter. The warehouse smelled of motor oil and decay, filled with shadows that could hide a dozen threats. They moved like ghosts through the labyrinthine interior until they reached the room where Sarah was being held. Marcus's breath caught when he saw her through a grimy window. She was thinner than he remembered, her dark hair shorter, but those eyes, Lily's eyes, were unmistakable. She sat in a chair, her hands bound, staring at the wall with the same quiet strength that had gotten her through years of caring for sick children. 2 guards flanked the door. Marcus's team took them down silently, professionally. When Marcus opened the door, Sarah looked up with a mixture of fear and defiance that transformed into shock when she recognized him. "Marcus!" she whispered, her voice hoarse from weeks of captivity. "Hello, Sarah. I'm here to take you home." "This can't be real," Sarah breathed, as Marcus quickly cut through her restraints. "How did you find me? How did you even know I was missing?" "It's a long story," Marcus said, helping her to her feet. Her legs were unsteady from weeks of confinement, and he steadied her with gentle hands. "Right now, we need to get you out of here." "Marcus, you don't understand. These men, they're looking for Tommy Morrison. They think I know where he hid their money, but I don't know anything. I was just trying to help Lily's babysitter." "Sarah," Marcus's voice was gentle but urgent. "Tommy Morrison is dead, and there's something else you need to know about Lily." The mention of her daughter's name made Sarah's eyes fill with tears. "Is she safe? Please tell me she's safe. I've been going crazy not knowing." "She's more than safe. She's with me." "With you? But how did you?" Sarah's eyes widened as understanding began to dawn. "Marcus, what aren't you telling me?" Before he could answer, David's voice exploded through his earpiece. "Sir, we've got company." Multiple vehicles approaching from the east. "Kozlov himself is here." Marcus cursed under his breath. Viktor Kozlov never came to routine operations unless something had gone very wrong. "Sarah, we need to move now." They rushed through the warehouse corridors, Sarah's hand gripping Marcus's arm as they navigated the maze of equipment and storage containers. Behind them, Marcus could hear shouting in Russian as Kozlov's men discovered the unconscious guards. "The main exit is compromised," David reported. "You'll have to go through the loading dock." As they reached the rear of the building, Sarah stumbled and nearly fell. The weeks of captivity had taken their toll, and she was weaker than she wanted to admit. "I can't. I need a minute," she gasped. "You can do this," Marcus said firmly, supporting her weight. "Lily is waiting for you. Our daughter is waiting for you." Sarah stared at him in shock. "Our daughter? DNA confirmed it yesterday. Lily is mine, Sarah. She's ours." The revelation hit Sarah like a physical blow. All those years of wondering if she'd made the right choice, of keeping Lily's paternity secret to protect both of them from potential complications in Marcus's high-profile life. And now, when she'd thought she might never see her daughter again, here was Marcus, risking everything to save them both. "You know," she whispered. "I know, and we'll talk about everything once we're safe. Right now, we need to focus on getting home to our little girl." The sound of their daughter's existence on his lips gave Sarah the strength she needed. They reached the loading dock just as David's team created an explosion on the opposite side of the building, drawing Kozlov's men away from their escape route. Marcus's SUV was waiting, engine running. James at the wheel, looking more nervous than Sarah had ever seen anyone look in her life. "Go! Go! Go!" Marcus shouted as they dove into the back seat. The vehicle lurched forward just as armed men rounded the corner behind them. Gunshots rang out, spiderwebbing the rear window, but they were already pulling onto the main road. "Is everyone okay?" James asked, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Marcus checked Sarah for injuries, while she sat in stunned silence, processing everything that had happened. "We're good. Take us home." "Marcus," Sarah said quietly as they sped through Chicago traffic, 8 years ago when I left the hospital, I was pregnant. I figured that out. I wanted to tell you, but you were this successful businessman, and I was just a nurse. Your recovery was so fragile, and I thought it would be better if I just disappeared." Marcus took her hand, noting how thin her fingers had become. "Sarah, for 8 years I've been building an empire that meant nothing because I had no one to share it with. Yesterday I found out I have a daughter, and she's the most incredible little girl in the world. We have a lot to figure out, but right now, all that matters is that we're both alive and we're going home to her." Sarah began to cry then. 8 years of secrets and 6 weeks of terror finally catching up with her. "Is she really okay? They told me. They said if I didn't cooperate, they would find her and hurt her. She's perfect, brave and kind and smart, just like her mother. She made you a friendship bracelet." Marcus pulled the small woven band from his pocket. "She wanted me to give you this and tell you that she loves you." Sarah clutched the bracelet to her chest, overwhelmed by emotion. "I want to see her. I need to see her right now." 5 more minutes, Marcus promised. 5 more minutes, and you'll be home." The Wellington mansion had never felt more like home than it did at that moment when Marcus's SUV pulled into the circular drive. Through the front windows, they could see Lily's small figure pressed against the glass, Maria's protective hand on her shoulder. "Mama!" Lily's voice carried across the distance as she burst through the front door, Maria hurrying behind her. Sarah stumbled getting out of the vehicle, her legs still weak, but nothing could have stopped her from running toward her daughter. They collided in the middle of the driveway, both of them crying and laughing, and holding each other as if they might disappear if they let go. "I missed you so much, baby girl," Sarah sobbed, running her hands through Lily's hair, touching her face, assuring herself that her daughter was real and whole and safe. "I knew you'd come back, Mama. I knew it. And guess what? I found Daddy. His name is Marcus, and he's really nice, and he has a big house, and Maria makes the best pancakes, and he read me stories, and he promised me we'd find you." Sarah looked up at Marcus over Lily's head, seeing him properly for the first time since the hospital 8 years ago. He was older, more distinguished, but his eyes held the same kindness that had comforted her during his recovery. Now those eyes were filled with wonder as he watched his daughter reunite with her mother. "Mama, look!" Lily held up her wrist, showing off a new bracelet Maria had helped her make. "I made one for you, too, and Daddy brought it to you, didn't you, Daddy?" Sarah smiled through her tears at how naturally Lily used the word Daddy, as if she'd been waiting her whole life to have someone to call by that name. "I have it right here," Sarah said, slipping the friendship bracelet onto her wrist. "It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." That evening, after Sarah had showered and eaten her first real meal in weeks, the 3 of them sat in the living room like the family they were meant to be. Lily was curled up between her parents on the massive sofa, reading them a story from one of her library books. And the little bear found his way home to his family, and they lived happily ever after. Lily concluded, closing the book with satisfaction. "That's my favorite kind of story." "Mine too," Sarah said softly, stroking her daughter's hair. Marcus watched his wife and daughter, because that's what Sarah was, he realized, whether they'd made it official or not, and felt a completeness he'd never experienced before. Even during his first marriage, he'd never felt this sense of rightness, of being exactly where he belonged. "Lily, sweetheart, would you go ask Maria for some hot chocolate for your mama? She needs to get her strength back." "Okay, Daddy." Lily kissed both her parents and skipped out of the room, leaving Marcus and Sarah alone for the first time in 8 years. "She's incredible," Sarah said, her voice full of amazement. "In 6 weeks away from her, she's grown up so much. The way she talks about you, the way she trusts you completely. Marcus, she loves you. I love her too. More than I thought it was possible to love anyone." Sarah studied his face in the firelight. "What happened to you after the hospital? I mean, I know you became successful, but there's something else. Something sad in your eyes." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "I was married for 5 years. Elizabeth and I had a son, David. 3 years ago, they were killed by a drunk driver." Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh God, Marcus, I'm so sorry. I thought my life was over. I thought I'd never feel anything again. And then I found Lily shivering in an alley and everything changed." "She has that effect on people," Sarah said with a small smile. "Even when she was tiny, she could make the grumpiest nurses smile just by looking at them. Sarah, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest." She nodded, steeling herself. 8 years ago, at the hospital, what happened between us wasn't just nurse and patient, was it?" Sarah felt heat rise in her cheeks. "No, it wasn't. I thought I was imagining things because of the medication, but there were moments when it felt like something more." "There were moments," Sarah admitted. "You were so lost, so hurt, and I wanted to help you heal, but you were vulnerable, and I was supposed to be professional. And then you found out you were pregnant, and I panicked. I convinced myself that what I felt was one-sided, that you were just grateful to me for helping you recover. I thought if I stayed, I'd just complicate your life when you were finally getting better." Marcus reached for her hand. "Sarah, what you felt wasn't one-sided. I looked for you when I got out of the hospital. I wanted to thank you. But more than that, I wanted to see you again. When they told me you'd quit and left no forwarding address, I felt like I'd lost something important. I was scared," she whispered. "I was 26 years old and pregnant, and in love with a man who was so far out of my league that it seemed impossible." "In love?" Sarah met his eyes directly. "Yes, in love. With you." The words hung in the air between them like a bridge neither had expected to cross. Marcus felt his heart racing as he processed what Sarah had just confessed. She had loved him 8 years ago, just as he had been falling for her during those long nights in the hospital. "Sarah," he began, but she held up her hand. "Wait, there's something else you need to know, something I should have told you years ago." Her voice was shaking now, and Marcus felt a cold dread settle in his stomach. "What is it?" "The night before I quit the hospital, I came to see you one last time. You were asleep, but I needed to say goodbye, even if you couldn't hear me." Marcus remembered that night vaguely. He'd been heavily medicated and drifting in and out of consciousness. "There was someone else in your room when I got there. A woman. She said she was your fiancée, Elizabeth." The mention of his late wife's name made Marcus stiffen. "Elizabeth was never my fiancée 8 years ago. We didn't even meet until 6 years ago." Sarah's face went pale. "Marcus, she knew things about you, personal things. She told me you were going to propose to her as soon as you recovered, that she was just waiting for the right moment to announce your engagement publicly." "That's impossible. Elizabeth and I didn't meet until 2018. At a charity function. We were married in 2019. She showed me a ring," Sarah continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "A huge diamond. She said you bought it before the accident and that she was keeping it safe until you were well enough for the proposal." Marcus felt the world tilting around him. What did this woman look like? Blonde. About 30, very elegant. She was wearing expensive clothes and she seemed possessive. "She told me that you had been together for 2 years before the accident and that my little crush was inappropriate and unprofessional." Dear God! Marcus stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. "Sarah, the woman you met wasn't Elizabeth. Elizabeth was a brunette, and she was barely 25 when we got married. She was still in graduate school 6 years ago. Then who? Marcus's mind was racing, pieces of a puzzle he'd never known existed clicking into place. I need to make a phone call. He stepped into his study and dialed Dr. Harrison's number, his hands shaking slightly. Patricia, I need you to think back 8 years ago. Was there a blonde woman who came to visit me regularly during my recovery? Someone who claimed to be my fiancée? There was a long pause. Marcus, you're going to think this is strange, but I've been meaning to talk to you about that time. There were some irregularities in your chart. Medications that were ordered but not by your attending physician. What kind of medications? Memory suppressants. Drugs that were designed to help trauma patients forget painful experiences, but they can also affect memory formation in general. Someone was giving you doses that weren't medically necessary. Marcus felt ice form in his veins. Who ordered them? That's what's strange. The orders came through official channels, but when I tried to track them down last month for a research project, the paperwork had been altered. Someone with access to our computer systems had covered their tracks. Patricia, the blonde woman. I remember her. She was very convincing, very authoritative. She had medical knowledge, knew how to talk to staff. We all assumed she was who she said she was. Marcus ended the call and returned to the living room, where Sarah was waiting with growing concern. Marcus, you look like you've seen a ghost. Sarah, I think someone deliberately sabotaged our relationship 8 years ago. Someone who wanted to make sure you disappeared from my life permanently. But why? Who would do something like that? Before Marcus could answer, Lily came running back into the room, followed by Maria carrying a tray of hot chocolate. Mama, Maria says we can make cookies tomorrow if you're feeling better, Lily announced, climbing back onto the sofa. Marcus and Sarah exchanged glances over their daughter's head. Whatever conspiracy had kept them apart for 8 years, whoever had manipulated their lives with such calculated cruelty, it would have to wait. Right now, their family was together, and that was all that mattered. But as Lily chatted excitedly about cookie recipes and Christmas decorations, Marcus's mind was already working on the problem. Someone had gone to elaborate lengths to separate him from Sarah, to make sure their daughter grew up without a father. Someone with medical knowledge, computer access, and enough money to orchestrate a sophisticated deception. Someone who might still be a threat to his family. The revelation would have to wait until tomorrow. Tonight was for healing, for reconnecting, for being the family they should have been all along. But tomorrow, Marcus Wellington was going to find out who had stolen 8 years from them. And he was going to make sure they paid for every single day his daughter had spent without him. The next morning, Marcus was in his study before dawn, surrounded by files and computer printouts that James had worked through the night to compile. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to form a picture, and it was more disturbing than he had imagined. "Sir," James said quietly, not wanting to wake the house, "you're not going to believe what we found." Marcus looked up from a stack of hospital records. "Try me. The blonde woman who visited you 8 years ago? Her name was Dr. Victoria Blackwood. She was a psychiatric resident at Chicago General, but she was dismissed 3 months after your discharge for unethical conduct." "What kind of unethical conduct?" "Experimental drug trials on patients without proper consent, manipulating medical records." The investigation was quietly buried because her father sits on the hospital's board of directors. Marcus felt his blood run cold. Her father, Richard Blackwood, he owns Blackwood Pharmaceuticals, one of the largest medical supply companies in the Midwest. They've been trying to get exclusive contracts with Wellington Industries for years. The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. Victoria Blackwood hadn't been a random visitor. She'd been conducting some kind of elaborate scheme, possibly to manipulate him while he was vulnerable, potentially to gain access to his business empire through a romantic relationship. Where is she now? That's where it gets interesting, sir. Dr. Victoria Blackwood died in a car accident 4 years ago, but her medical license shows activity up until last month. Someone's been using her identity. It appears so. And, sir, There's more. The car accident that killed your wife and son 3 years ago? Marcus felt the room spin around him. What about it? The drunk driver. Michael Torres had no history of alcohol abuse. His blood alcohol level was consistent with someone who had been drugged, not someone who had been drinking. The case was closed quickly because Torres died in the crash, but the investigating officer noted several inconsistencies in his report. You're telling me Elizabeth and David were murdered? I'm telling you that someone has been manipulating your life for years, sir. Someone who wanted to keep you isolated and vulnerable. The sound of footsteps in the hallway made both men look up. Sarah appeared in the doorway, wearing one of the robes Maria had found for her, her hair still damp from the shower. I'm sorry. I heard voices and wanted to make sure everything was okay. Marcus stood up, his mind reeling from James's revelations. Sarah, we need to talk. All of us. 20 minutes later, they were seated around the kitchen table while Lily ate breakfast and chattered about the snow that had started falling outside. Sarah listened in growing horror as Marcus explained what they had discovered. So, this Victoria Blackwood deliberately separated us, and then years later, she may have been involved in killing your first family. Sarah kept her voice low, so Lily wouldn't overhear. It's looking that way. The question is why? Daddy, Lily said suddenly, looking up from her pancakes. Who's the lady in the picture? Marcus and Sarah both turned to see what she was talking about. Lily was pointing at James's tablet, which displayed a driver's license photo of Dr. Victoria Blackwood. Where did you see her, sweetheart? Marcus asked gently. She came to Aunt Betty's house a few weeks before Mama went away. She was asking lots of questions about Mama and about me. Aunt Betty told her to go away, but she left her a lot of money. Marcus and Sarah exchanged horrified glances. Victoria Blackwood, or whoever was using her identity, had been tracking their family. She had known about Lily's existence. Lily, this is very important, Sarah said carefully. What kind of questions was she asking? She wanted to know about my daddy, if Mama ever talked about him. She asked Aunt Betty if we had any pictures or papers that Mama kept, and she asked where Mama worked. The timeline was becoming clear. Someone had been systematically gathering information about Sarah and Lily, and 6 weeks later, Sarah had been kidnapped. It wasn't a random crime related to Tommy Morrison's debts. It had been a targeted attack designed to separate Lily from her mother. Sir, James said quietly, if Dr. Blackwood is still alive, and she's been orchestrating all of this, then your family is still in danger. Not anymore, Marcus said with deadly calm. James, I want every security measure we have protecting this house, and I want a full investigation into Dr. Victoria Blackwood, her father, and anyone connected to either of them. Already in progress, sir. Good, because whoever this woman is, whatever she wants from us, she made one critical mistake. What's that, sir? Marcus looked at his daughter, who was now making shapes in her syrup while humming contentedly, completely unaware that she was the center of a conspiracy that had torn her family apart for years. She underestimated how far I'll go to protect my family. As if sensing the tension in the room, Lily looked up and smiled at both her parents. Are we going to decorate the Christmas tree today? It's only 2 weeks until Christmas, and I've never had a real Christmas tree before. Marcus and Sarah both felt their hearts break a little at that innocent statement. How many Christmases had their daughter spent without the family she deserved? We're going to have the most beautiful Christmas tree you've ever seen, Marcus promised her. And they would. But first, he was going to make sure that whoever had stolen 8 years from their family would never threaten them again. 1 week later, the Wellington mansion was transformed into a Christmas wonderland. Lily had insisted on decorating every room, and Marcus had discovered that saying no to his daughter was virtually impossible. The 12-foot tree in the living room sparkled with thousands of lights and ornaments that Lily had carefully selected from the best shops in Chicago. Daddy, do you think Santa knows I live here now? Lily asked, as she hung a small angel ornament on a low branch. I think Santa always knows where good little girls live, Marcus replied, lifting her up so she could reach a higher spot. Sarah watched from the sofa, finally looking healthy and rested after a week of safety and good food. The friendship bracelet Lily had made still adorned her wrist, and she had refused to take it off even to shower. "Marcus," she said quietly, while Lily was distracted with the ornaments, "any word from James about the investigation?" "Victoria Blackwood, the real one, died 4 years ago, just as we suspected. But someone has been using her credentials and her father's resources to orchestrate everything that happened to us." "Who?" Before Marcus could answer, James appeared in the doorway with a grim expression. "Sir, we have our answer." Marcus handed Lily another ornament and stepped aside with James and Sarah. "The person who's been manipulating your life, sir, is someone you know. Someone who had access to your personal information, your schedule, your vulnerabilities." "Who, James?" "Dr. Patricia Harrison." The revelation hit Marcus like a physical blow. Dr. Harrison had been his doctor 8 years ago, had performed Lily's DNA test, had access to all his medical records and personal information. "That's impossible. Patricia has been my friend for years." "Sir, Dr. Harrison has been in love with you since your first stay in the hospital. She's been systematically eliminating anyone who might compete for your affections. She recruited Victoria Blackwood to help her 8 years ago, and when Victoria got cold feet and tried to back out, Patricia arranged her accident." Sarah felt sick. "She manipulated me into leaving, made me think Marcus was engaged to someone else. And then she wormed her way into his life over the years, positioning herself as his trusted doctor and friend. When he married Elizabeth, Dr. Harrison couldn't handle it. She arranged the car accident that killed his wife and son." Marcus felt rage building in his chest, unlike anything he'd ever experienced. "Patricia killed my family?" "No, she was counting on you staying isolated and damaged, dependent on her for support. When you started to heal and move on, she got desperate. The attack on Sarah was her attempt to eliminate the last threat to her fantasy of having you to herself." "Where is she now?" "That's the problem, sir. She's missing. Her house is empty. Her office is cleared out and there's no trace of her anywhere." "Daddy?" Lily's voice cut through the tension. "Why does everyone look so sad? It's Christmas." Marcus forced a smile and returned to his daughter. "We're not sad, sweetheart. We're just talking about grown-up things." "Well, grown-ups think too much. Come help me put the star on top of the tree." As Marcus lifted Lily high above his head so she could place the golden star at the very top of the Christmas tree, he made a silent vow. Dr. Patricia Harrison could run to the ends of the earth, but she would never hurt his family again. He had the resources to find her, and when he did, justice would be served. But that was tomorrow's concern. Tonight was about celebrating their first Christmas as a complete family. "Perfect!" Lily exclaimed as the star settled into place. "Now it's really Christmas." Sarah joined them by the tree, and for the first time in 8 years, Marcus felt complete. His daughter was safe. The woman he loved was by his side, and they had the rest of their lives to make up for the time they'd lost. "I love you both so much," Sarah whispered, tears in her eyes. "I love you too, Mama. And I love you, Daddy. This is the best Christmas ever." Marcus gathered his wife and daughter in his arms, looking up at the star Lily had placed with such care. 8 years ago, a conspiracy had torn them apart, but love had brought them back together, and nothing would ever separate them again. Outside, snow continued to fall on Chicago, blanketing the city in pristine white. Inside the Wellington mansion, a family that had been broken was finally whole, ready to face whatever the future might bring. Together. The little girl, who had been shivering in an alley just 2 weeks ago, was now safe in her father's arms, surrounded by love and warmth and the promise of all the Christmases to come. Sometimes, Marcus thought as he held his precious family close, miracles really do happen, and sometimes they come disguised as a 7-year-old girl with her mother's eyes and a heart big enough to heal a broken man's soul. Their story was just beginning.